Hello, and welcome to our very first episode of Lessons from a Horse. In this episode, we are going to be talking about using fear versus using encouragement in the work that you do with your horses. We'll take a look at why encouragement works so much better and helps you form a great relationship with your horse. And we'll also talk about how these ideas relate to our lives outside of horses and the way that we interact with ourselves. Most of us can agree that using fear to train our horses is something we want to avoid. It just doesn't give good results. We don't want to bully our horses or scare them into doing what we want. And we don't want to force them to do our will or for them to feel like they have no other option than to do what we say. Rather, we want to love them and encourage them so that we develop a relationship with them where they enjoy working with us and want to be around us. That is what our training here at Tusky Dressage is all about. Learning how to develop a partnership with your horse that is based on mutual trust and respect. Learning how to communicate with your horse in a way that he can understand. And creating an environment in which your horse wants to be with you and enjoys the work that you do together. For us, classical training encompasses more than just riding. It also includes the mental health and well-being of the horse. Our horses are treated as our partner, and our relationship with the horses always takes priority over anything we may want to achieve with them. Through relationships built on trust and respect, we are able to train our horses to the highest levels of dressage, or at complete freedom in liberty work, without any use of force. Now, before we continue, I want to clarify that building a relationship doesn't mean that the horse is allowed to just do whatever it wants. Sometimes we do need to set boundaries, and sometimes we do need to be firm in asking them to listen to us, much in the same way that a parent would with a young child. But when we are firm with our horses, it is because we have their best interest in mind, and we want to create a healthy relationship where our horse both trusts and respects us, and we both trust and respect the horse. A horse that does whatever it wants, or runs you over, or refuses to listen is not respectful, and is a danger to himself and others. Sometimes also we will need to encourage our horses to do something that is difficult for them, or they don't always want to do. For example, asking an out-of-shape horse to do an exercise that will increase his strength. In this case, we need to encourage our horses to do something that they may not want to do because we have their best interest in mind, and we know that what we are asking them to do will make them feel better. This is much in the same way we might attend a fitness class or hire a personal trainer. We know the work is good for us, but we need some extra motivation. When this is the case, we want to approach our work with our horses from the mindset of encouraging them rather than pressuring them into doing what we want them to do. Whenever we ask the horse to do something difficult, it's important that we are respectful in how we do it. Examples being only asking for a difficult exercise for a short period of time and then rewarding him for it instead of drilling it over and over. Sometimes we need to let go of our own timetables for how fast the horse should be progressing, and instead adjust our progress based on the horse's abilities and comfort levels, always encouraging him along the way. If we've already built a strong relationship with our horse, then when we do need to ask him to do something difficult, he will be much more willing to work with us, knowing that we will respect his limits. Oftentimes, if a horse is struggling with something, it's because he just doesn't understand what we want, or he's unsure about doing it. Imagine trying to learn algebra or go skydiving with someone who doesn't speak your language. I bet you'd be a little uncertain too. If If we slow down and break things down into small steps, it gives the horse a chance to understand and get comfortable with what we are asking. Forceful training creates horses that are unhappy or resentful. Nurturing a relationship with our horses and training through encouragement creates horses that are happy and willing. In each scenario, we may be asking the horse to perform the exact same movement, and the result may even be that the horse performs that movement. But the difference is in the how. How are you asking the horse? How does the horse respond? How does the horse feel about what you've asked, both physically and mentally? How has what you've asked improved your relationship with your horse? Is what you're doing making your horse more tense, more confused, more nervous? Or is what you're doing leading to relaxation and a greater comfort level and a greater understanding? The answers to these questions will be very different depending on whether you've used fear or encouragement to communicate with your horse. So like I said at the very beginning, I think most of us can agree that using fear in our training is something that we want to avoid when working with our horses. But what about with ourselves? I was listening to a podcast from Jane Pike from The Confident Rider, which I'll put a link for in the notes. And she mentioned that we often use fear-based training with ourselves. And when I stopped to think about that, I realized just how true that was and how often I do it myself, and I'm guessing that you probably do too. So we're going to look a little bit closer at that idea of using fear with ourselves. Do you ever say things like this to try to pressure yourself into doing something? If you don't do this, you will never be successful. What will people think of you? If you don't do this, you'll never get what you want. You are going to look so stupid if you don't do this. A real horse person would be able to do this. If you don't do this right, you are going to screw up your horse. You are such a failure. And there are so many other variations that we use on ourselves all the time. But when we talk to ourselves in this way, we are using fear to pressure ourselves into doing something that is going to be hard for us or that we don't want to do. We are trying to scare ourselves into doing the thing by telling ourselves what terrible outcome will happen if we don't do it. And oftentimes, just like our horses, the reason we don't want to do something is because it is uncomfortable for us. I know I do the most procrastinating when it's something that I'm anxious about doing. Any good horse person knows that adding fear to an already nervous horse is a recipe for disaster. So why do we do it to ourselves? Instead, when you're struggling with something, whether it's because you don't want to do it, it's going to be hard, or you have some anxiety about it, try to focus on the beneficial outcome that it will have for you. For example, this will help improve my relationship with my horse. This will help me to become a better rider. This will expand my comfort zone and help me grow. This will help me reach my goals. You can also think about encouraging yourself by thinking things like this. You are strong and confident. You can handle this. You have overcome difficulties before. Your future self will thank you. You are doing great. And stop comparing yourself to others. Be realistic in the things you ask yourself to do. Don't force yourself to do something just because everybody else is. Here's a little secret. I'd be willing to bet not everybody is. Focus on yourself and where you are in your journey and what the right next step is for you. Maybe you need to let go of the timetable you think you need to be on and just move forward at a pace that is realistic and comfortable for you. Now, sometimes you may need to be firm with yourself, just like with your horse, in asking yourself to do something that you just don't want to do. Going to the gym, or eating healthier, or having that difficult conversation that you've been avoiding. Try to break it down into small, reasonable steps if possible, and stay focused on the positive outcome that will happen if you do the thing you are having trouble with. Avoid pressuring or scaring yourself into doing it, which will likely make you unhappy or resentful, and therefore less likely to want to do it again. Instead, use love and encouragement. It will change the way you feel, and it will help you develop a positive relationship with yourself. So many people feel negatively about themselves, and the way that we talk to ourselves plays a huge role in that. This is something that I definitely struggle with, and I'm guessing you probably do too. But if we can train our horses with love, patience, and encouragement, it seems only fair that we treat ourselves and others the same way. I remember vividly a time when I felt called to do something in my spiritual life that would take me out of my comfort zone in a huge way. I was frozen with fear at the idea of it, despite it being something that I really wanted to do. I couldn't move forward with it, and no amount of negative self-talk was making a difference. Then one night I felt in my heart God tell me that even if I didn't, He would still love me. It was that love that broke through my fear and allowed me to move forward. God loves us just as we are. He loves us when we fail. He uses His love to encourage us and to help us. Our horses love us just as we are. We love our horses and show them encouragement. Now it's time for us to show ourselves the same love. Thank you for joining me today. I'd love it if you'd share your thoughts on this podcast in the comments. I always enjoy hearing from our listeners. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving a review and sharing with your friends. If you want to learn more about developing a better partnership with your horse, you can check out our website, tuskydressage.com, or search for Tusky Dressage on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And you can also sign up for our virtual classroom on Patreon at patreon.com/tuskydressage. And lastly, if you are looking to go even deeper into the lessons our horses have for us, you can check out my book, God's Heart Through a Horse's Eyes, available on Amazon and Amazon Kindle. Thanks again for joining me on Lessons from a Horse, and I'll see you next time.